On this day in 1970, Celtic became the first British club to defeat an Italian team over 2 legs in European competition. The European Cup campaign of season 1969-70 was an emotional rollercoaster that ended in crushing disappointment for Celtic. But some of the triumphs along the way saw them soar higher than they ever had since Lisbon, and higher than they ever have done since. The quarter-final draw paired Celtic with Italian champions Fiorentina, and in one of the greatest European nights of the era, in the first leg at home on the 4th of March, they swept them aside in a swashbuckling 3-0 win, orchestrated by the veteran Bertie Auld. Bertie hadn't played for 5 weeks since being injured in a Scottish Cup match against Dunfermline, but he scored the opening goal and had a hand in the other 2, prompting Fiorentina manager Bruno Pesaola to say after the match, "Auld was the master tonight. He was the great midfield player for Celtic." Despite the convincing win, thoughts could not help but turn to the previous round, when a 3-0 first leg lead over Benfica had been blown in a 3-0 second leg defeat, Celtic progressing only on the flip of a coin in the referee's changing room after the match. Goalkeepers Evan Williams and John Fallon were put through the mill the day before. Malcolm Munro reporting in the Evening Times on the 17th of March 1970. "It seems manager Steen is expecting his keeper to be a very busy man indeed tomorrow night. Not only did Steen fire in shots from every angle, but he tore a strip off both players when they made mistakes. At the end of it, both Williams and Fallon were sweating profusely. I said to Steen afterwards, 'You must hate these two,' and he said, 'Goalkeepers are the guys who can give you the biggest headaches, so they get more work to do.'" This time, Steen was determined that there would be no chances taken, and sprang a surprise when George Connolly, who hadn't started a first-team game all season, lined up alongside Billy McNeill in defence, with Jim Brogan adding Steele in midfield in a defensive 4-3-3 formation. They lined up Williams, Hay, Gemmell, Connolly, McNeill, Brogan, Johnston, Murdoch, Wallace, Lennox, Auld. Subs, Fallon, Craig, Hood, Callaghan. Celtic had to withstand fierce pressure in the first half, Jim Parkinson writing in the Glasgow Herald of the 19th of March 1970, "With a magnificent rearguard deployment of their players at the Stadio Comunale here tonight, Celtic, having led 3-0 from the first leg, advance into the semi-finals of the European Cup. Celtic had to withstand the greatest pressure that has been exerted on them all season, yet they accomplished their work in a cool, orderly manner, apart from slight apprehension when they lost a goal just before the interval." With George Connolly mopping up anything that got past Billy McNeill, despite the pressure, Evan Williams in goal had remarkably little to do, and on one occasion, as the ball flew towards him, he casually stepped aside and allowed it into the net. Fiorentina had been awarded an indirect free kick in the penalty box after Davy Hay was penalised for obstructing Italian international forward Luciano Chiaruggi. Chiaruggi smashed the ball into the net, but aware it was an indirect free kick, Williams elected not to touch it. Speaking to David Friel for CelticFC.net in 2012, Williams, whose recollection had Brazilian Amarildo as the free kick taker, recalled, "I knew it was an indirect free kick, but Jock was going mental on the sidelines. Afterwards, he had a real go at me, but I knew the rules and the goal was disallowed. I actually remember the referee coming up to me after the game and patting me on the back. He was delighted someone knew the laws of the game." 4 minutes later, Fiorentina had the ball in the net again, and this time it counted. Jim Parkinson reported, "McNeill appeared to be booked when he conceded his first foul, but the centre-half raced back to his goal area to head the free kick clear. A Fiorentina player reached it first and sent the ball to the opposite wing, where again it broke badly for Celtic, and Chiaruggi was left with a clear view of goal. He scored with his close-range shot. Fiorentina were inspired by this success, and Celtic had to play it cool to prevent the loss of another goal." Unlike in Lisbon in the previous round, where the loss of a 35th minute goal had been followed by a second before half-time, there was to be no collapse this time, and the second half was far more comfortable. Jimmy Johnston and Bertie Auld on opposite wings began to carry the ball, taking Celtic upfield and relieving the pressure on the defence, while Bobby Murdoch had one of his best games for the club, dictating the play from the middle of the park. Jim Parkinson wrote, "Though Celtic lost this second half encounter, they still possessed the potential of European Cup winners. They were prepared to play until they dropped tonight, and in the end, they showed the Italians what fighting spirit really means as they finished taking the game to the Italians with some casual exhibition football." This time it was Bobby Murdoch who most impressed Pesaola, who said, "Murdoch is the papa of the team. The rest are the sons around him." Confidence around Celtic was now sky high after their dismissal of one of the favourites for the competition. Malcolm Munro wrote in the Evening Times, "So that's Celtic in the semi-final of the European Cup, and for my cash, all set to win the big one for the second time in 3 years." With the east terracing at Celtic Park about to undergo work on a new roof, the semi-final was set to be held at Hampden, and even before the match in Florence, Celtic had already had 140,000 tickets printed, marked simply, "European Cup semi-final, Hampden Park, Glasgow. Date and time of kick-off to be announced." How's that for confidence?